Hey, it's Victor Devon, and you're listening to We Were Less, the podcast. Thank you to the Patreon supporters Alex, Amy, Andrea, Bo, Doll, Drew, Kelly, Princess Chris, Rob, Rocco, Ruthless Retribution, and Stormageddon. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much. This is Victor Devon, and you're listening to We Were Less, the podcast. Today is a bright and sunshiny day in California for me. It is August 23rd, 2020, and I am on the phone with producer, performer, and new podcaster, Miss Mary Jane Green. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how are you today?
And you are in Texas. How are things there?
You know what? It is a gorgeous day today. It is absolutely beautiful. And so I was out in it, enjoying it. It's just, it's one of those days where it's like, it's awesome to be alive. And there's all kind of sucky things out there, and I'm just not going to think about it.
Well, I always say, because I come from the East Coast. I was born in Connecticut, and I lived in New Jersey, and I was frequently in New York and all that jazz. And whenever I say that it's hot here, because we're talking over 101 here for the rest of the week, everyone immediately then says, "Oh, but it's not humid." And you know what? I have only so many fingers for that person, because once you hit, frankly, I think 95. I don't care how humid it is; it sucks no matter what. So how is that? Is the humidity an issue in Dallas, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, the humidity is not as bad as it is in Houston, which is kind of funny because people in Dallas hate people in Houston, which is not true. I, of course, have friends in Houston. But yeah, it's always like this rivalry thing. But they have way worse humidity than we do. But yeah, it gets pretty bad. It is 97 outside. And I was outside because that was actually like, wow, it's really cool.
Now, I have had the pleasure of speaking to you only technically once before. You're doing a podcast called Show Pony, and it is your way of speaking with all kinds of entertainers. Actually, it's not just limited to burlesque, right? It's expanded to, frankly, all sorts of entertainers. Is that correct?
Yes. So I really wanted it to be very open and inclusive. And I've had people from the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. I have, someone who was an ice skater, people who work in entertainment reporting, someone who is a female mechanical engineer who travels the world speaking to other women about going into the STEM careers. So really just people who speak to people on the road and not necessarily just entertainers.
Why did you decide to take this on as a project, and why the road aspect? Why was that important?
Okay. So yeah, there was no podcast. There was no idea for a podcast. None of that really existed before COVID. But what did exist was me putting together an online shop. So I was creating a hybrid shop where I would take it to different conventions, like cheerleading conventions and, gymnastic conventions and pageant conventions and, as well as like BurleyCon and Beehoff, if I could, get in as a vendor, those sorts of things on the weekends. And I put together and curated all kinds of things for the traveling performer, no matter what kind of performing you were doing, but ways to travel. Because as a traveling performer myself, people kept asking me, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And what do you use? And so I was like, I should put it all together and make a little shop. And wouldn't that be fun? And so I spent a long time doing this and getting affiliate links and all this. I, like an ambassador for Glamour Gear, which is the greatest bag ever. I'm so excited to be associated with them, and launched this whole thing the first and second week of March.
So very recently, all things considered.
Yeah, so launching a travel store the week of the pandemic, closing everything down. was, really bad luck on really bad timing, I would say. But I mean, I did sell things and it did do okay. But of course, it was like, okay, life is rapidly changing. So I'm not going to be able to market these things right now because there
Mhm.
is nowhere to travel to. And, lots of people are losing their jobs. It doesn't seem right to be like, so you want to buy my bag? But I'm like, what can I do while I'm stuck here? Now I'm stuck at home and I'm not traveling. What can I do when I wasn't sewing? Because I was sewing masks for quite a while until that sort of it just became so cheap to purchase them, at the 7-Eleven.
Mhm.
So I was like, I got this email and it was like, learn how to podcast. And I was like, oh, I guess I could do a podcast about traveling performers. And so I made it like the media arm of my boutique. And it's been great. It's been wonderful. It's been much more successful than my online store. And it's
Yeah,
it's
especially
been really fun.
for me, I've done 100 some episodes of this, and and basically it was for me it was my way of just doing what I always did, which is burlesque performers love to talk about what they do, why they do it, where they come from, the process, and all that,
Mhm.
either backstage or just in gatherings, much to either the chagrin or the patience of our civilian partners. And I just wanted to give the opportunity to myself, frankly, to have the opportunity of just like talking to people and learning more about them. And these are people, some of them, or I've known them for years. And I just, we just never had that conversation about sometimes why and how. We'll often ask, how long have you been doing it? But for I think at least to some of us, and this pandemic is proving it, the why is uh, is coming up for a few of us in terms of what's the passion, what's the interest.
Yeah,
So,
and the longer we go through the pandemic, the more important it is to have these conversations
mhm.
because it's very hopeful. You know, so many of them are rooted in I have some great ideas and I'm really excited about the future.
Mhm. Yeah. So, where do you hail from originally? Are you a Texan by birth?
I am. I'm from the next city over, Fort Worth.
Okay, I've been to
Yeah.
that airport.
Yeah, it's right in the middle there. Dallas Fort Worth.
It is a
Um,
frequent middle ground between New Jersey and California. They like that as a middle.
yes, it's a big, big airport city. American Airlines is headquartered here as well as Southwest.
So does
So
anyone
it's
ever
a
ask,
big
well, if
airport.
you're from Texas, why don't you have what would be perceived as a Texan accent?
Yeah, except for when I lived in New York, and then they all were like, "Oh my god, your accent."
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'm from here, and I do live here currently, but I've also lived in New York and LA,
Mhm,
which has, both its pros and cons. But I do, as a traveling performer and one who primarily does live theater based performances now, I find being right in the center of America easier than being on one extreme coast or the other.
yeah, I would. I mean, it seems potentially odd for individuals that you would be somewhere in the middle, but Texas seems like it would be such a hub. You can pretty much get anywhere,
Hmm.
particularly Dallas or Houston or San Antonio. So yeah, makes sense. Um, when did you start getting into theater? Were you a theater kid or the living room entertainer?
Yeah, I was, that kid that started ballet when I was 2 and I don't remember it. It's just always been. And then, so my dad was in bands and musical theater. And so it was just, this is what you do. And this is part of it. And yes, of course, I'm an amazing director when it comes to, other 6-year-olds and using sheets and, things we find in drawers. You know? Absolutely. It's just, I've always done it. And I couldn't imagine life without it.
Are you more script related or are you more improv?
I like a healthy dose of both.
Okay.
But when I'm on stage, I rather like improving, and doing film and television, I rather like scripted.
Mm. I guess yeah, because you're then you know where to look, where to go. You have a
Mhm.
sense of um, parameters to work with.
Yeah, especially if it's like, okay, we're gonna do another take, and it's like, can you do it just like you just did? And I'm like, fuck, I don't remember. Yeah. So yeah, those things are much easier just in the medium of film and television for everything to be incredibly scripted.
What were some of the things that you've done for film and television?
Oh gosh, all kinds of stuff. But I think the biggest flop that I did
Mm.
was it's actually really a lot of fun. It kind of became a little bit of a cult classic. And it's called My Big Fat Independent Movie. And I played Amelie.
What was that experience like?
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Actually, it was a great time. And, I think we shot for about a month. All over LA, some pretty cool, iconic places. And I remember I had to wear this cat suit, like I was a burglar. And I was like, oh God, I'm so fat in this. And now I watch it and I was like, oh my God, if I only had that body now.
I know we are wasted on ourselves. We always don't. We need to look at ourselves with far more understanding that
Yeah.
we'll appreciate that later. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and so, yeah, I've gone through coming from, very strict LA acting, going through issues with body dysmorphia, with
Mm.
eating disorders, with being obsessive compulsive with working out. And so, I think for myself, burlesque has really helped me with acceptance of my body and being okay with, you know, who I am at this moment and not being perfect and loving my flaws. Where the art form of film and television was unrelenting and they
It's
would
just
let you know it.
hypercritical.
Hypercritical.
Yeah. What were the things like? What were your castings like? Because I always listen to like character actors, even like modern day character actors, where they will say, "Oh, we go into a casting and it's always the same people because everyone's reading for the same role because you're a type." So
Yes. Yes, it's just like that. That La La Land, where she walks into the room and there's 10 other women wearing the same thing because they tell you, like, okay, wear a white button down and you're going to have a black skirt and have your hair in a messy bun. I mean, sometimes it gets very, very, very particular like that. And you walk in and there's 10 other people who look like you. And
is that
it's
intimidating to
just
you, or is that a challenge?
I mean, it's like throwing a dart on a dartboard. Like it's not necessarily the best actor that's going to get it. It's not necessarily the best read that's going to get it. I mean, the reasons that they have for picking casting is so out of your control,
Hmm.
that it's infuriating at times where you find out because I worked in casting as well, and just listening to some of the decision making, it's like, oh well, she kind of looks like my ex-wife, yeah, fuck her, she's out.
Mm.
It's just like, what could you possibly do, like, so you reminded them of their ex-wife, so it is a very hard business. And I did it for a very long time until one day I literally had enough. And I was like, I want to go enjoy acting again. And I don't anymore. I don't enjoy doing the commercials for STDs and being so happy that I got that paycheck, And so I decided to go back home, if you will, to Texas and go to graduate school. And I got my master's and I was able to do some of the great things. I got to play Lady Macbeth. I got to,
Really?
yes, I got to do some really wonderful things. I got to do the 39 Steps, which is one of my favorite plays. And I found my love of being on stage again. And for me, it's not doing film and television as a business.
Hmm.
It's approaching it as an amazing art form and fuck the money. And that has made me a very, very happy person. Which is why I do side hustles and look for things like open my little online hybrid boutique, Show Pony Express. Because yeah, I'm
Where
not
did
making
that
that
sort of?
commercial money anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with it. I'm very much at peace with it because I'm in charge of of myself. I'm in charge of my branding. I'm in charge of the acts that I create and the costuming and
Yeah.
the lighting and the music and all those things. Whereas before, it's like you would just sit around and hope your phone would ring.
Where did that like entrepreneurial spirit like come from? Because you seem like a very uh, optimistic. Well, I will avoid using words like perky or something like that. That also sounds like a casting call. But you are extraordinarily friendly, and you
Thank
are
you.
very like into it. And, like to talk to someone who is so into their craft is really cool. But there's not even necessarily like a pretense or like um, a mask that you're hiding behind it. Like, how do you get your genuine thrill out of that? Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from the fact that no one ever gave it to me.
Mm,
I had a really tough upbringing for sure. I've been on my own since I was 16.
mm,
And I was one of those people who my parents claimed to me, even though I didn't live there. So I was not eligible for student loans and I wasn't eligible for scholarships because I wasn't a full time student. So I was a full time stripper and I was a full time waitress and I was a full time cashier. And it's just like I hustled. And it took me 20 years to finish my 2 degrees because there were some semesters I could take one class and there were some semesters I could take zero classes. And there are lots of people who are like, "You're never gonna finish," because it was a big uphill battle, and it's
mm,
always been. And I distinctly remember my mom saying, "Why does anybody want to watch you do anything? How in the world are you going to get a house?" And I bought my own fucking house, and that
mm,
felt so fantastic.
mm.
And I bought it with money that I made acting. And I
Yeah,
sold it
you're
with money I made acting, and I made money on that real estate. And it was like, I don't need a man to do this. I don't need to be in a traditional 9 to 5 job to do this. I don't need to be in a marriage to do this. Like, there's you can do anything you put your mind to. And it may take a fuck of a long time, but when you get it, it is amazing. It is the most fabulous feeling in the world. And so I have just always been self-employed and like self-motivated because it's the only way I'm going to get it.
have you been like a coach or an instructor for others? Because it seems like you would have like that sort of energy that would provide folk with uh, inspiration that they can get through it too.
Well, thank you for saying that. As far as that is concerned, it's something that's kind of started to happen. It wasn't something that I looked for, but people started contacting me. Either they knew me or they knew someone who knew of me, and they had lost their jobs because of COVID. And they were like, I hear that you know how to make money in your room. I hear that you know how to like run businesses from your house. And so they came to me looking for coaching. And so I have started coaching, but it was not something that I thought I would ever do. But
Mhm.
I'm enjoying it for sure.
What do you think you would work like a better on a one-on-one level, or do you think you'd work better in like a class or a conference room situation?
Well, right now I'm doing one on one. And I had been doing some one on one coaching as far as like choreography, helping people with particular choreography just because of
Uh,
my background in dance or whatever, my background in theater. But now it's morphed into we're doing one on one help with how to survive, how to make money on your computer, how to make money from your room, how to utilize different online platforms to make it into a job.
mhm.
So from that, I thought, well, you know what? I should probably put together some online courses, and I'm actually working on that. I'm working on a book series as well.
You're doing a
So
lot. Very
yeah,
good.
I do. I have a board and it has like this list of stuff. And I spin lots of different plates because sometimes they fall and they don't work out. And so you have to have the plates going. But I'm very excited about my book projects. And so the online courses will come out of the books. So it's like, well, if you like this book, then I will have this course that aligns with it. And I'm really excited about that. And that seems to be the future of where I'm going. So that when things do open up, this is, this is income that I can take with me on the road, no matter where I'm at.
Hmm. Yeah, it travels
It
as
travels.
as is your want.
Yeah, and it's I really wanna I'm in the market for a camper. I wanna have a
Ooh.
little, like, tin can caravan.
Would you travel by yourself or do you have like an entourage?
I always travel by myself, but my goal in having my little tin can caravan is that I wanna take my dog with me.
Oh, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. It's like a
I would
little like.
love for him to see all kinds of things. He is a rescue. He was found in a ditch.
Oh.
He was in a dogfighting ring, and has really really bad scarring on his back. Someone threw battery acid on him. They feel something like that. So he's had a lot of trauma, and so seeing new places, going new sights, new smells, like everything like that is really exciting to him. And so I've been wanting to take him on the road, but I have a Prius. It's like driving a hairdryer. It's so tiny. And so I'm trying to make that happen. And I'm excited about it.
Where are some of the your favorite places that you've traveled to and why?
I think Ireland was one of my favorite places to travel to.
I've been to Ireland. Where'd you go?
I was in Dublin.
Uh huh.
And just because that's, ancestrally where I'm from, or at least part of me where I'm from. And so that was very cool. And because of my hair coloring and my skin coloring, people kept asking me for directions. And I'm like, I'm from Dallas. I don't know. I just landed here. But everybody thought I was Irish. And that was pretty cool.
Did you
Another
get to kiss the Blarney Stone? Did you get to?
No, no. I stayed within the city center. I was on my way somewhere else. So I was only there for a couple of days. I would love to go back and spend more time there. And I have made some performer friends there since going. So I really hope to make that another stop. New Zealand was incredible. I just recommend everybody go to New Zealand. And it was a fascinating place to visit. I can't wait to go back. And it was amazing to me when I got there how many people were there that I knew, because the performing community is not nearly as big as you think it is. And so it
Hmm.
was like, oh, I have some friends here. This is so incredible, because you get somewhere and you don't know if it's like, I don't know anybody. So that was amazing. And I made, some great friends in Rome when I was in Italy. And I don't know, I love traveling. And it's something that I really wanted to do as an actor, and it wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. It was a lot of sleeping in hotel rooms and spending, like, 17 hours on a set, and you don't get to
Hmm.
see jack shit. You know? And then
It's
they
the
put you on a
glamour.
plane and you go away. So in burlesque, I'm able to make these travel vacations and see the sights and do whatever because I'm in charge. And it's just I couldn't ask for a better profession. I'm so lucky, and I know I worked really hard for it, and I will continue to work really hard for it because it's the best life.
If somebody is as are you, someone in the United States, and let's just say COVID is not a thing anymore. What are some of the tips or tricks that you would impart upon that person to say, make sure you think about this, bring this, don't worry about that? What would you say?
As far as traveling or becoming a performer?
In terms of traveling at the moment.
Well, I would say always have multiple forms of money, because it is amazing how many people have one central locale. Like, okay, I have a wallet and I have $20 on it and a credit card, and then it gets stolen, and you're like, I'm fucked. And it's like, well, what's your AAA? I don't know. What's your insurance? I don't know. What's your driver's license number? I don't know. Like, because it was all in the wallet. So as a traveling performer, because you could totally get robbed in the dressing room, or you could be in the hotel at night and someone breaks in and steals your
You could leave it in the
camper.
cab. You could. There's all kinds of, yeah.
There's so many things that could happen. Like, don't just take $20, have $60 and have those 20s in three different places. So if you do get robbed, you still have some money.
Mhm.
And learn that the very hard way. So I say that because it happened to me. I was completely out of money in Rome, like completely, because I got I got what's the word? Um I don't know, taken advantage of, like a street
Legal?
person, you know what I mean? Like a what do you call them? The hawk people, the con artists.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and it was just like, well, fuck, and it's like, I had to call someone to like wire me money and all. So like never again, like I learned the hard way. So if like you have a pocket, so put money in 2 pockets, put money in your bra if you have one, because you need access to funds to eat, to get into an Uber, sometimes to get into a country. Sometimes you have to pay. So you just don't ever want to be stranded without funds.
Mhm. How do you pack for a show? Do you have an itinerary that you're like, okay, so I'm going here, I'm going here? You sound very organized. So do
Yeah.
you plan to only bring one costume? Do you bring multiples? Do you bring in case something comes up?
It depends on where I'm going. So if you're going to a place like Italy, they tend to book 3 acts. So you need to bring 3 acts. And
Hmm.
then you go to other places who just book 2 acts, but it's like, well, I got a 3rd one. And then it's like they have options. So it's like, well, you
Right.
could choose, you know what I mean? So packing the most that you possibly can is incredible, because if you're on the road, say you're on the road and you're like, okay, well, I don't have, a show for these next 4 days. But then someone tells you, oh, by the way, in this other city, they've got like a Tuesday show and I know the producer, blah, blah, blah. Well, then it's like, not only are you there and ready to roll, but you have options. And then they tend to really be like, oh, well, look at this. She's got more than one thing. Um, so if you could pack 3, that would be ideal. And I have some costumes that I do just for traveling. So when I'm performing them here in the States and I can get there in my car, it's a much more elaborate costume than
Hmm.
I take in a plane, because I could pack it much smaller and do sort of an abbreviated costume and get all 3 of them in a carry-on, because I personally do not like to put my stuff into checked baggage.
Hmm.
I mean, I will my overnight stuff. But if it's my costume, I try everything I can to keep it with me, because there are horror stories about people losing costumes and baggage.
Hmm.
So that's why I have multiple costumes for acts, because I'm trying to pack them into one very tiny bag. PonyPod, a traveling performers podcast. If you like hearing from traveling performers, please subscribe and leave 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Miss Mary Jane Green, the Trouser Tent Teaser. You can find me on the main social media platforms or by joining my mailing list at missmaryjanegreen.com. In the immortal words of Jack Kerouac, nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever so on the road.
Bananarama?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
A band?
Yeah.
Yes. As a pastor's kid growing up in the 90s, there was a lot of mainstream entertainment that I was sheltered from.
Stephen Root, he does one of the voices.
Okay.
You know him from News Radio.
Do I?
You know him from Office Space.
Do I?
You know
Most things, really. So, now that I am an independent and out queer 30-something, I'm finally asking my friends to teach me about all the stuff I missed out on. Wait, Raffi did Beatles covers?
Yes, he did.
My mind is blown.
He did Octopus's Garden. And,
Yeah, I remember Octopus's
Yeah,
Garden.
no.
I didn't know that wasn't a Raffi original until just now. The Re-Education of Hazel Tart. Subscribe now.
Kevin Costner. He was so foxy.
I know the name, I don't know the face. I cannot. What is Kevin Costner? Can you just show me a picture of Kevin Costner's face, please?
Think of the guy,
This is hurting my
not
head.
Cheech Marin, but think of the other guy in Tin Cup.
I've never seen that.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, aka Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
How would you explain your performance style to someone who asked?
So my performance style is very, it's very inspired by the Weimar Berlin. I wrote my graduate thesis about Weimar Cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very 20s, it's very ethereal, somewhat dark sometimes, sometimes perky. It's very centered in the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Specifically European.
Yes, it's very European for sure. But I think it's important to have a niche, you know? I mean, to do one sort of genre well, as opposed to trying to be a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
And it works well for branding because, you know, it's like it's very definite. This is who I am. This is what I do.
It's what I live for.
It's what I live for. I was actually thinking very recently, like in the last couple of days, I was like, maybe I should do an audiobook of my graduate thesis. But make it like less graduate thesis-y. Maybe like, you know, jazz it up a little bit, but, you know, making it available as like a paperback and an ebook and an audiobook. I'm like, you know, it's a limited audience, but I think people might enjoy it.
I'm very curious because I think that, and again, if you make it accessible to someone, you never know how that might be informed as someone who needs to know it from an acting standpoint, as well as someone not just from a historical standpoint, but someone from a craft standpoint. That also can be very useful.
Yeah, and one of the things I had to do in graduate school to finish is I had to do, you know, a physical theatrical project in conjunction with the paper itself. And so what I did an immersive project. I did an immersive theater of 1 hour where I sort of recreated Weimar Berlin for 1 hour. And it was a complete 360. So the people who came in had to be in costume. The people there that were in the show were costume, and it was everywhere you went. Because at the time, my home was from 1929, and everything in it, you know, my whole home was basically a museum to the 20s. And it was videotaped, you know, for posterity and turned in. It was so fun. It was so incredible. And it was a lot of work. But I enjoy immersive theater. I would love to do more of it.
Yeah, we had a bit of a renaissance in New York City in the last couple of years of immersive theater, and I don't know what the future of that looks like because of everything. but and I know I have a number of friends and colleagues that are out of jobs right now because that was their job, and immersive
Yeah.
theater isn't going to be working right now.
Yeah.
But I think what might be very interesting is trying to convey um, the lack of immersive theater, the lack of interaction in a distant watching kind of way. We may look at technology a lot differently because of this and how we interact even in person. So I think that that's going to be a very interesting thing that actors, directors, and sex workers are going to be at the forefront of making that happen. And that's going to be pretty fascinating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, I interviewed Miss Betsy Rose and her show. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Bathtub Gin, something gin. Is a completely immersive, multi-level burlesque show. And,
Mm.
she's like, I had zero idea how we're gonna, do that in the future. Um, but that is the thing with immersive theater. Like, it's that one moment, and then it will never be there again.
Hmm.
It's a very, ethereal, it's there and then gone, which makes it so magical, and so if we don't get to do that for quite a while, it's even more fantastic for the people who got to experience it.
I mean, there's ways of doing it. I mean, there was a show in New York, and I'm pretty sure it traveled, called Fuerza Bruta, which was mostly a dance show, and a lot of it took place away from the audience because it was separated by like this thick, um, what do you call it? It was like a very heavy plastic, so you could see through it, but it separated from the audience. So that I mean, the only problem was the audience sort of crammed together. But there are ways that
Yeah.
I think you could manage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful and excited about performing arts come back and seeing all the creative ways people, address the social distancing, yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the in terms of burlesque again? Now you also sing. That's correct.
I do.
What is your preference vocally?
Blues and jazz.
Okay. Who are some of your influences?
Oh, Billie Holiday for sure.
Mm.
The house that I live in right now, I live with, 2 other people, and I've been here for about 2 years. So I walked down the hall the first time I came into this house, and there was a giant poster of Billie Holiday in the hallway, and I was like, "I'm gonna be happy here."
Good omen. Good omen.
Absolutely. Frank Sinatra. I grew up on Frank. Absolutely. Love that man. Oh, he is fantastic in every sense of the word. He's a wonderful person, a wonderful philanthropist, a wonderful civil rights activist. Um, just, growing up with both of my grandfathers being jazz musicians, I was heavily influenced by jazz music.
Mm. Do you play an instrument?
I don't.
I'm almost surprised.
My instrument is my voice. Yeah,
I'm
no, I
just
was
sort
in
of surprised
dance.
you haven't like you're like, oh yes, I know how to do this. I'm my own big brass band.
I put one woman band. I did see a one man band one time where he had all the bells and whistles. It was very Dick Van Dyke looking.
Uh-huh.
It was really fantastic, sort of vaudeville variety guy. But no, dance was such a big part of my life where, it's like, 5 days a week, 5 or 6 hours a day after a full day of school. So, yeah, there was not time for something like taking on an instrument. I was just incredibly serious about performing.
What are some of your favorite songs to sing?
I really like pretty cheesy torch ballad things,
Hmm.
Peggy Lee stuff.
Mm.
Um, Let me think.
What would be good? What would be an audition song for you?
Oh God. I would have to think. I don't even know. I used to have an iPod that had like all these playlists of like, these are my audition songs and this is my jazz playlist. And like it stopped working. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm lost without my playlist.
Would you consider doing a sort of one person show with words and music?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Would you want to do it as a character, or would you want to do it as a sort of a heightened version of Mary Jane?
Definitely a heightened version of Mary Jane. Um, I I think that might be quite fun, but I would definitely, it's like that would be something really fun to take around to the Fringe festivals.
Hmm. Do you have like a whole entertaining fictitious backstory that you just sort of lean on for her, or is it more this is just what I put on at the moment?
Yeah, no, it's just me. Okay, so I have an answer to your song. If I to your song question.
Uh-huh.
So if I had to pick just one song and that was my audition song
Hmm.
for anything, for musical theater, for singing in a cabaret club or whatnot, it would be Don't Explain.
Okay. Why?
It's so as far as Billie Holiday's recording of it, which I believe that she originated that song, even though it's been done by quite a lot of people. It's incredibly guttural. So she is speaking, not even from the heart, but from the gut, where she has just been kicked down.
Hmm.
And she's literally explaining that she understands that this man cheats on her, treats her bad, will probably hit her later,
Hmm.
use all her money, but it doesn't matter. Just don't explain.
There's so many songs from that era, including like "My Man"
Yeah.
and these quintessential torch songs where uh, the women are beaten down, sometimes literally. It's a fascinating thing to look at because even though that carried into like the '60s with like Phil Spector, and that carries even in today with some songs, there's a lot of criticism these days if that a singer or songwriter, if they're not being autobiographical or telling a story that isn't safe for all consumption, or it doesn't sound like an endorsement, it's really rough. But our standards, we have what would now be, I guess, sort of be considered problematic. I
Mhm.
find that kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah, I
endorsements.
mean,
They're just
as far
slice
as
of
like a
life.
feminist is concerned, that song would be quite problematic. However, she was such a strong woman, and this still happened to her. And it
Yeah.
is her story. And it's my story. It's definitely happened to me. I
Well, you
lost my
do.
entire life savings with the last
Mm,
person that I lived with. So when I sing that song, I am singing that song. I went through that.
mm,
And I know I'm a very strong person, so I don't find it problematic because I came out on the other side, and so did Billie Holiday.
mhm,
So while I understand that argument, I still don't agree with it because to sing the song means that you've had to look at yourself and you have to admit the situation, which is the hardest thing.
mhm. Yeah, I looked it up. When you asked, when you said it, you thought that it may have been she was the first one. She wrote it.
She wrote it.
So
Okay.
yeah, she wrote it, and it says in her 1956 autobiography, she cites the infidelity of her first husband as the inspiration for the song, specifically an instance in which Jimmy Monroe, her husband's woeful attempt to explain away the lipstick on his collar, elicits Holiday's disgusted response: "Take a bath, man. Don't explain." And it's been covered like zillions of times.
Oh, yeah. It
By,
became a standard for
yeah,
sure.
But I thought was really interesting in the trivia section, and this sort of ties, I think, an interesting element. It says lyrics from Don't Explain were sung by Carlo Marx in the 2012 film adaptation of the novel On the Road by Jack Kerouac,
Which is the novel that I quote at the end of my podcast.
which is right. So
But
it's just a funny little tie together.
when you asked me that question, so many titles of songs like flooded my brain. It was like it took me a second to sort of like catalog them in my mind and
Oh,
to
sure.
settle on one. While you were asking other things, my brain was still going through my Rolodex, my mental Rolodex, because that's a huge question to a singer. It's like
Oh, sure.
how do you come down to like one? But for me, it is that song.
I mean, I love Abroad for one thing, and I love one of my major inspirations is Elaine Stritch, and
Mhm.
she did a sort of a memoir show, and I love B. Arthur, and she did a memoir show, and they had to pick these songs, and you look at the selections that they pick, and most of them are from their career because that's the story they're telling, but a
Sure.
number of them are songs that reflect on the career from that era. Um, and you look at earlier drafts, and there was like, what? How do you pick? Like, how did the B. Arthur cast recording is, I think, 16 songs or so,
Mhm.
but the original had like 35 because you have to narrow it down and decide this is what tells the narrative.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a big deal. What do you hope to get out of the rest of this year, as we're
Oh
almost
my
at
gosh.
2021?
I have so many things. So right now I have a huge prop being built.
Okay.
And it was something that I was doing before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and I thought, ooh, do I move forward with this?
Mhm.
And it's something that I had worked with a welding friend on for years. Like, we'd been wanting to do this for years. And, he just kind of said to me, if you need to hold it, I understand. But if you can afford to keep going, I have a lot more time and I really need the money.
Mhm.
And so I was like, all right, fuck it, let's do it. And which is scary as somebody who is self-employed, because it's like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen, but okay, let's do it. And so I'm very, very excited about that. I'm supposed to do a show in March with it. We shall see. I have
Mhm.
no idea. I mean, Jesus, who knows what's gonna happen? But I'm just gonna be optimistic and move forward with that. But I'm a corporate entertainer, so I know when corporate gigs kick up that it's going to
Mhm.
be, it's going to be warranted and booked, and I feel confident when we go back to whatever normal will become, that I will make my money back on it. But it's scary. It's scary
Mhm.
to do that.
Are you
Um,
your own manager?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
You get
work
to,
for
well, that means you get
several.
to make the call. That means you get to negotiate yourself and.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I work for several event companies, but I was very clear, like, I wanted it to be my prop, and then they have to hire the prop and me.
Mhm.
So, because that, obviously it's mine, I get to do whatever I want with it, and I get a much higher salary.
In the world of burlesque specifically, but also I guess we're at a time in this broadly as well,
Yeah.
uh, where we have difficulty asking for what we are worth or asking for what we deserve,
Mhm.
monetarily wise and also ethically. How do you approach getting that? How do you be confident in going in saying, this is what I need, this is what I want, and this is what I deserve? Because I think a lot of us struggle either with an imposter syndrome
Mhm.
or with the sense that if we overshoot it, then we'll miss the gig. How do you know what's worth it?
I have a sliding scale. So, if you have a show that has been around for just a couple of years and you're in a smaller town, I have a rate.
Mhm.
If you have a show that's been around for a long time and has a big following, I have a different rate.
Mhm.
And if you have a show and you are my friend and you really need some help, then there's a third rate. So it really depends. And I try to be flexible based on where it is in the country, what people are paying, in that town. Because the amount of money that you make in metropolitan area is much different than in a rural area
Mm,
sometimes. Um, but I do have firm limits where it's like, I have to make this amount or else I can't come. Or if you can help me, create a tour out of this with contacts you have in your area, then we can work out a deal. Because then if I get 3 bookings in the one, that's going to help me help you.
sure.
So I try to not price myself out. I try not to freeze myself out and just be like, that's the price. I try to work with people while holding firm on I need this or I need you to help me make this.
Hmm.
And I try to be flexible because I don't know everyone. No one knows everyone. I don't know
Mhm.
the ins and outs of your area. But like in the Rust Belt in particular, I've ended up making great friends out of doing it that way and got a lot more work up there. And to the point that I actually want to move there part time in the spring and summer and leave the awful heat of Texas and go live in Detroit just based on the friendships that I made there. Like, look, I will work with you. Like, I want to do this. And I got to make this amount. Let's see how we're going to make this happen. And it turned into friendships. How cool is that? Because,
Well,
you're a producer who needs to make money. I'm an
uh,
entertainer who needs to make money. Let's help each other. And and that has always worked for me.
well, thank you for that. I think that is an important thing for us to also recognize that you also can say no, and that's okay. I think some of us, for like, we are Tinkerbell in such a sense where if we don't have that next gig where we know we'll get applause, we panic. And I
Yeah.
know that COVID particularly is making a lot of us, because I've spoken to them, making a lot of us worried that everyone will forget about us and that
Yeah.
suddenly we won't have what made us so happy.
But I will say I have said no
Hmm?
because, it's like I have to make this amount and they couldn't make that amount happen. So it was just like, well, call me when you can.
Let me know.
Yeah. Because, there's a certain amount where it just doesn't financially make sense.
Well, I will include all of the ways that people can keep up with you on the internet and see what you are going through, where you're going to, and who you're interviewing on your new podcast. You have in place a system where you end your podcasts with a very specific and familiar set of questions. I love these set of questions because I do think you learn a lot about these people very easily. And I'm going to just steal it right from you. And we're
Please
going to
do.
include this.
Spread the love of James Lipton.
This is an abbreviated pivot, as you refer to it, as the Inside Actor Studio Questionnaire. It is the what is the bully? Help me with it. Bullion de culture is the
Uh,
original series.
it was a French TV show that I don't know how to pronounce.
I think it's bullion. I think it's bullion. Because like
Bouillon.
I'm thinking like the beef of culture. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Anyway. All right. Miss Mary Jane Green, what turned you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
For myself, and for most of the people who answer this for me, it is music. There is something transcendental. Transcendental? Is that a word?
Transcendent.
Transcendent. We'll tell you transcendent. It
Yeah.
it is amazing. It could take you anywhere. It could take your mind anywhere. In music, you can do anything. And smell as well. Smell
Mm,
can get you to a memory so fast. And from acting, like smell can get you there, can get
mhm,
you into that moment that you need for the role. So music and smell.
hmm. What is your favorite curse word?
Twat waffle. And if I'm feeling really frisky, I'm gonna put a waffle emoji.
What sound or noise do you love?
Laughter.
Any kind of laughter?
Yeah. Yeah, any kind of laughter. But that really guttural, like when you can't stop and
Belly
it's
laugh.
people are laughing that you're laughing, that's even funnier. It's even better. I like to make people laugh. I like entertaining people. So even if it's not from me, just seeing people enjoying the moment is fantastic.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Nails on a chalkboard, but also teeth on a fork.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do you have any teeth left? Is it just a stub at this point?
What profession, other than your own, all of them, would you like to attempt?
I really want to be an astronaut.
Really?
Yeah, I would really love to go to space. I would absolutely pay for that opportunity if it ever came up, or volunteer if they, wanted to do civilian travel to space. Absolutely.
So there's like you're Jodie Foster in Contact. They come to you and say, "We have this experimental machine. We don't know where it will take you, but we made the 3D model out of the blueprints." You'd be like, "Yeah, sure."
I would be like, open the pod bay doors, Hal.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear your idea of God say when you arrive?
I don't believe in it. So it's like I ask that question every time, and I'm like, no.
Well, it's if it exists.
If it
So
exists, I really, really hope it's like, okay, well, we're gonna send you back.
you just reincarnation. You would just
Yeah,
like to like, okay, take two. Can we try it a
exactly.
different way? All right.
Take 365. I'd like to be a butterfly this time, if
Yes.
if I could request.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Miss Mary Jane. I appreciate you spending some time with me, and you also giving an opportunity for others to speak on what they know, love, and aspire to. I think it is extraordinarily important at this time and at any other that we as entertainers recognize that we are, if not the backbone, a major part of the skeleton that gets other people and ourselves through absolute bullshit that the world creates. Because through COVID, what did we do? We went to streaming services. We got the books. We went to YouTube. We downloaded what we needed to listen to. I think it's extraordinarily important that people recognize that the arts are not just essential, but they are expansive. And we are well-rounded people, and we deserve to be recognized as that.
Yeah,
So,
thank you so much for having me. I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate your time.
My absolute pleasure. Again, I will include all the ways that people can keep up with you. Quick final question: where does the name Miss Mary Jane Green come from? And do
Okay,
you frequently get a lot of 420 questions?
everyone thinks I'm a giant pothead, and it's not true. My grandmother's name was Mary Lou Green.
And that's
So
simply it.
what's that?
And that was enough. That was all you needed.
Yeah, and so, I'm an equity actor, okay, straight out, and when I came back to Texas, there was not a lot of equity work, and so it was like, "Hey, can you do this one for me under the books?" And I'm like, "Okay." They were like, "You have to come up with a name," and it was like, "Ma, but I'm always my name," and they were like, "But you have to come up with a name," and so I was like, "Okay, my grandmother's name is Mary Lou, let's do Mary Green. Mary Jane Green, okay." And when I started doing burlesque, I just added a miss.
Yes, there you go.
Sorry, equity.
All right. Thank you again. I will be delighted to hear more from you and see what else happens in the world that you will somehow add into your bag of tricks, because you seem like an enterprising kind of gal, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Mary Jane.